Day 568 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 270,000 military personnel losses, which represents an addition of 620 losses in the past 24 hours. Then a big day for hardware losses, including 15 tanks, 18 APVs, and a record-breaking, or at least matching, 42 artillery systems. Then we'll jump across to the map where an absolute whopper of an explosion occurred in the Saratov Oblast earlier this morning, which was suspected to be a gas pipeline. And the reason was either due to, say, anti-war partisans or without sufficient or stringent safety practices or methodologies. But either way, it shouldn't be happening. And it's not even the first time that it's happened, because it's happened at least once or twice before this year alone within Russia. And the explosion itself, it's just horrifically massive. Then we'll head across to the Ukrainian map today into the Donbas, as it's been an entire year since Putin instructed the Russian army, in combination with the Wagner PMC, to take the Donbas by the date of the 14th of September 2022. And the deadline wasn't just for some place like Bakhmut within the Donbas, but instead the entirety of the Donbas region, comprising of both the Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts. So when that set goal failed to materialize, Putin got angry, then realized that the date was a little too aggressive, so he created a new date, the 31st of December last year. Needless to say, he's not really been making a lot of dates since then. Instead, he set his sights on dismantling the Wagner PMC by a certain date. Ironically of which, the Wagner PMC was the most effective element within the Russian army. So it almost appears like there is a non-zero chance that Putin could actually be an undercover CIA asset. I mean, probably not, but one could easily argue the case for it on many accounts. Then we'll zoom into the Donbas as Russian social media channels reported their positions having to leave Klishchivka and Andrivka in the direction of Bakhmut. Although we do wait for a confirmation from the AFU side on this one. But as a reminder, all of this blue on the map represents liberated territory within just the last 2 weeks. All by the Ukrainian forces, of course. And the green is liberation prior to 2 weeks. So not bad for the underdog that is Ukraine in this war. And then as for the underdog, there was a fire noted near or at a railway station belonging to the Donetsk capital, which may have been renewed Ukrainian strikes on Russian logistics in the region, as Ukraine always seeks to take the Russian army's legs out. Then we'll head across to the southern front today. So Ukrainian forces made some limited new gains just south of Robotyne. Then also, Russia counterattacked west of Robotyne, but failed to make any gains and thus retreated. Also, several Ukrainian sources claimed there was an advance west of Vovova, so for the Ukrainian forces, in the southern direction following the trench network, although this isn't yet confirmed. And so the ingenuity of the underdog continues in this region. For instance, Ukraine has a whole production sector devoted to the making of decoys, like this pretend air defense radar component, which Russia mistook for the genuine article, which happens from time to time in terms of Russian military resources utilization just getting wasted. And I've got to say, it's also extremely likely this one was reported as a successful hit under Russia's completely incompetent reports-based system that requires zero accountability when making such claims, all the way up the chain. And speaking of which, for this region as a whole, Putin in fact, recently stated that Ukraine lost 71,500 military personnel and also 543 tanks, but also an astronomical 18,000 armored vehicles, and that's not even possible, just since the commencement of the Ukrainian counteroffensive here in the past few months. I mean, give me a break. And what's even more mind-boggling, at least to me, is the high likelihood that he actually believes these figures, as all of those numbers and falsified Russian military reports go all the way up the chain to the Russian MOD and accepted as fact, where Shoigu himself prints out a daily summary on a nice little A4 piece of paper for President Putin to read with his morning tea, and not to be mistaken with Putin's polonium tea. That's quite different. And so impossible figures like these just go to show how Russia is stuck in their own BS echo chamber of delusional madness, where they continue to display a lack of actual real situational awareness on the military front. Good. Keep doing that. Then we head away across to the Kherson Oblast. So a Russian T-90M tank was, this one with special sandbag add-on armor, was hit by an FPV loitering munition of the Ukrainian 11th National Guard Brigade east of Oleshki, leading to the detonation of ammunition on board and a turret toss. I should have called that a signature turret toss. So a $300 FPV drone is a very good exchange for the best tank that Russia has to offer in this war. Just remarkable stuff, really. Then headed south, as for an update on Russia's naval embarrassment in Sevastopol yesterday. As it's been confirmed with solid evidence now that the Rapucha-class landing ship, the Minsk, and Kilo-class submarine, the Rostov-on-Don, has been destroyed in the dry docks. Just smouldering pieces of metal now. And all as a result of the pre-dawn strike by the effective UK-provided Storm Shadow cruise missiles. So it really was one really quite expensive morning for the Russian military. That submarine alone is worth about 300 million US dollars. I mean, this is a catastrophic failure of Russian defense and planning on every level. Air defenses, insufficient. And the dry docks position is way too close to this theatre of war to even consider using it for maintenance and repairs of naval vessels. Now, Russia, of course, initially played down the events as a little bit of damage, but under the weight of insurmountable evidence, that's clearly no longer the case. And I still find it bizarre that Russian Navy and other elements of the Russian military continue to deploy here. It must be that echo chamber at work here again. For instance, believing that they have the best air defenses in the world. And I used to say that Russia needed to move all the way back to the Novorossiysk port in Russia proper, in the motherland, which they did, but even then that wasn't far enough, as that's where you might remember the Olengorsky Gonyak landing ship got damaged with a destructive naval drone impact onto the hull. But all in all, it was one expensive and demoralizing day for Russia. Oh, but also in occupied the Crimean Peninsula, so this happened just today, earlier this morning. Explosions were heard in Yevpatoria, so I might need to zoom in for that one. Oh, there it is. And multiple separate explosions were recorded as a result of this event. And as it turned out, the AFU destroyed a Russian S-400 air defense system complex, those of which are worth roughly 500 million. And I'm not talking rubles here. I measure in the world's primary reserve currency of the greenback. And it's interesting because where this happened, in fact, is not far from another Russian air defense battery that was completely destroyed about a month ago around Kuznetsk. So either Russian air defenses are underperforming or lacking availability, or Russia is not learning from its previous mistakes. Probably a combination of all three though. Then we'll head across to some news for today. So the European Parliament made a significant declaration on September 13th, officially designating the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, Uncle Luka, as an accomplice to the actions of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In this resolution, the European Parliament acknowledged Uncle Luka's complicit behaviour in the conflict involving Ukraine, placing him on par with Putin in terms of responsibility, and urged the International Criminal Court, the ICC, or The Hague, to issue an arrest warrant for him. And this is what happens when you launch air-to-surface missile strikes and perform other nefarious actions in support of Russian aggression in Ukraine. So just like Putin, Lukashenko's world is likely to get a whole lot smaller soon as well, with an inability to travel to most international destinations. Then moving across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment. So there was a recent interview conducted with a captured Russian soldier from the 70th Motor Rifle Regiment posted near Verbova at the Zaporizhia front lines, where he explains the pretty dire situations found for Russians and the Russian mobilized troops. And for his story, he mentioned how his positions faltered with just 3 of them left, and the other 2 were wounded, and so they all decided to crawl to the Ukrainian side, and mentioned there were many Russian deserters throughout the entire phase of them being there. He also said that his commanders forgot all about his existence, no surprises there, and as far as sustenance goes, him and his unit occasionally got some water, but only on very hot days, not very much. And he also stated that how he didn't get food from the army, but was instead forced to steal it, which he also mentioned food theft is quite rampant in the Russian military. So again, the Russian mobilized treated like utter garbage. And I'll say, if Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid has anything to say about this guy and many like him are living right at the bottom of this pyramid, where the focus is not on winning some military engagement or battle, but instead the baseline physiological needs of food and water to live. So not exactly a military that's geared to strive for success on the battlefield. Then moving across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So after yesterday morning's early events in Sevastopol, Russian Defense Minister Shoigu was interviewed by a reporter, and in part of that interview, the reporter asked, "Will we win?" And Shoigu's reply, more of an instinctive shrug than anything, as it actually looked like he was about to break out into tears. But not only that, as the footage was almost immediately deleted from the Russia 1 TV channel website. But wow, this guy really looked like he was on the edge. So that will have to be it for today, guys. I spent half the day working on technical issues, really. But thanks for watching. Please feel free to like and comment, subscribe if not already. I think I'm just about to hit that 90k mark, which would always look nice. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.